Louder!
I'm still alive, motherfucker!
And what's up, everybody, and welcome back to Lights, Camera, Exploitation, your guide to exploitive cinema. This is the pod boss, TJ Bowser, and joining me as always is my doppelganger, Kangabanger from down under, Mr. Brody Cain.
Howdy, howdy, you sexy sons of bitches.
And joining us as always with an empty ball bag, Mr. Nick Reese.
Good morning, Vietnam.
Today we have a very special episode, but before we get to that, what you guys been up to? Brody?
Well, it has been a hot minute. I've been watching nothing but quality content. Went and saw Top Gun Maverick there the other night, and what a cinematic experience it was to see in the theater. The only way to see that film is in theaters, so if you haven't, go and fucking suss it out ASAP. It had no right to be as good as the OG, if not better. Yeah, that film was fantastic. I've been watching a lot of TV series, finished Invincible, the cartoon series. Fucking
Hell
fantastic. Yeah. And just recently caught up on The Boys. Started watching season 3 of that. Amazing show that is. Other than that, yeah, just collaborating with Mr. Bowser on a few things and getting this comic book up and running. The progress is starting to kick along really, really fine and dandy. Mr. Bowser's putting a lot of time and effort into it as well, which is fucking awesome. Yeah, but other than that, yeah, just working and watching a lot of shit. How about you, Slick Nick?
Well, shortly after we went on our break, me and the Beetle Bros wrapped up our podcast, did our finale stream. That was a good time. Hopefully we will still be doing some stuff here in the future, probably some more video content. Other than that, I have also been working, did a bit of relaxing, but also been planning this vacation road trip for later this summer. That should be a bunch of fun. Other than that, I have been being responsible and trying to catch up on checkups and health stuff and everything, which is taking a lot more time than I would think, but mostly everything has come back okay so far, so we're glad about that. Other than that, I think about to start watching Stranger Things season 4. So I've been waiting for so long for that, and I've heard it's great. I just haven't gotten a chance to start it yet, so I don't know, I might do that later today. We'll see. TJ, what you been up to?
Well, boys, it's been so fucking long since I talked to you guys, but it's been quite the time. I've been super fucking busy. As Brody already mentioned, we've been working on our comic book. We're about 2.5 months out now from probably most of the art being finished and us about to start to wrap up issue 1. It's been slow going, but it's been a learning process for us all. It's our first comic book, and I'm kind of learning as I'm going. So it's very, very interesting to say the least. But I've been watching a fuck ton of film, been watching a lot of X-Files recently. Brody and I have been on this Alien kick, so we've just been watching a ton of these Alien films. And of course, if you're going to watch Alien films, you're going to watch the X-Files as a result. But anyway, order some stuff from Vinegar Syndrome's halfway to Black Friday sale. Brody did too. And then this Partners Only month was also very enticing. Got some stuff there. It's just a super exciting time for physical media, and I can't wait to get all those orders in. Can't wait to watch all of those films. But what I can't wait to do is talk about this week's very special episode. And this week's very special episode is a Klaus Kisnki super special spectacular. And we're going to talk about 4 of his films. We're going to talk about his career a little bit and what we think about him and his various talents. No, the man is a legend, and the man is a legend in the acting world, and he should be celebrated. I mean, he's mostly remembered for his eccentric attempts.
A little bit. A weird coincidence. Just like not but a few days ago, while I was getting ready to do notes for this, I was sitting and chilling on Reddit, and there was a question thread where someone was like, "What is a celebrity you know of that is an absolute psychopath?" And the second to top response was Klaus Kinski.
Yeah, he's pretty.
He was
well
only
known.
beaten out by Jared Leto.
He's pretty well known for his eccentric behavior and all that, but we have our own reasons for stuff, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But a little backstory on Mr. Kinski. He was born Klaus Gunther Karl Kinski on October 8th, 1926 in Sopot, Poland. So if you think about that real long and hard, think about what time frame he grew up in, okay? Okay. He appeared in over 130 film roles in a 40-year career. Kinski was a controversial and aggressive figure, often misunderstood, in my opinion, who was prone to emotional and often violent outbursts directed at his directors and fellow cast members, issues further complicated by a history of mental illness. Fun fact, in 1980, Kinski refused the lead role of Major Arnold Tote in Raiders of the Lost Ark, telling Steven Spielberg, "This script is a yawn-making, boring pile of shit, and moronically shitty."
Fuck, I love this man.
Sadly, he passed away on November 23rd, 1991 of a sudden heart attack, probably mid-stroke, at his home in Lagunas, California at 65 years old. His ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean. Of his 3 children, only his son Nikolai attended the funeral. If you look into that, you can make your own decisions on why that happened. We have a couple quotes from Mr. Kinski, and the first one I'll spout off is, "I've solved the mystery. You have to submit silently, open up, let go, let anything penetrate you, even the most painful things. Endure, bear up, that's the magic key. The text comes by itself, and its meaning shakes the soul. You must have let the scar tissue form on your wounds. You have to keep ripping them open in order to turn your insides into marvelous instruments that is capable of anything. All this has its price." And of course, with that, I take it as he's talking about his art and just what he has to go through in order to become these characters. And it's interesting, and we'll talk about that. And I think the first film we'll talk about is 1970s in God Said To Cain, directed by Antonio Margheriti. Brody, read that plot.
Gary Hamilton, a former officer of the army, is in prison sentenced to forced labor for an attempt robbery. In reality, it was a friend of his, a combar, who committed the crime and left Hamilton's water bottle at the scene of the crime as evidence. 10 years later, Hamilton is pardoned on the basis of his military record, leading Gary to return to his hometown, determined to take revenge on Bacomba and his wife.
She's just a whore.
Bitch.
I love that he was convicted solely off of they found his water bottle and they were like, he did it!
She's just a whore. She never forgot about him the whole time.
Bitch.
Fuck.
It's that.
Boys!
I didn't get to know him. I only got to betray him.
What did you think of when God Said To Cain?
I really liked it.
Yeah?
I really enjoyed it.
So
I like revenge stories and I like westerns.
A lot of people compare it to High Plains Drifter, and if you've watched that film, spoiler alert, that has kind of like a supernatural element to it. This feels like it too. Like Kinski feels like a fucking phantom.
A little bit.
Yeah, and like I said to you in our little chat there after I watched it, you know, there's definitely those scenes where he disappears and then it's all about the sound design when he disappears, the rustle in the wind, and he's just vanished.
Yeah.
Like the editing's there. It's really cool how they do it. It's cheap. It works well. But like you said, yeah, you summed it up pretty good. It's like got this supernatural element about it, and especially when it takes all place at night. There's no lighting there really to showcase these actors, so it captures that realism, you know. I enjoyed it for what it was. It was definitely something a little bit different. As much as I love High Plains Drifter, it was good to see Kinski own this performance. I think this is his strongest performance out of the 4 films we've chosen.
Oh,
okay.
That's just me personally. I'll talk about that a little bit later when we discuss Kinski. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
fucking A. Nick, you're a fan of spaghetti westerns. What'd you think of it?
I am indeed. I do agree with that sort of supernatural element to it. I do like that it more or less takes place over the course of just the first night that Gary comes into town.
Yes.
So like with him popping up everywhere, it's almost inhuman. It's just like he's here and then he's at the mansion.
Okay.
And then he's back in town.
Friday 13th Part 8, Jason.
Yeah. Like, I'm definitely surprised there wasn't a part where Akembar walks past a tree and he just materializes out from behind it. Like, but I really do like that element to it, because it just makes him a force to be reckoned with. And you can kind of see why Akembar is so afraid of him from the very moment that his son hands him the water bottle and is like, hey, your buddy Gary gave this to me. He said he's going to come back tonight and get it. And he's just like, fucking who?
It's so fucking cool because he like goes through the trouble of like befriending his son and was like, hey, give this to your dad. And he's just like, yeah, fucking give it to him.
It's great. It's almost a place beyond the pines, kind of.
Fucking A. Yeah, I just love the whole setup and everything for this film. It's so cool, and I think Kinski's performance just really drives it home. Like, he almost like floats into scenes and shit and just kind of appears out of nowhere, and he just blasts people away. And I like how the whole film is just shrouded in darkness, and it gives it this unique feeling where other spaghetti westerns are just super bright, and they're like really muddy and stuff, where this film is just dark. There's really low angles and stuff. And I mean, really low angles. Look at the scene wherever he first gets out of jail after being pardoned. I believe when you watch, I actually watched the audio commentary for that. It's actually the same set you see later on, but it's just filmed from such a fucking low angle that it looks completely different, which is just rad to me. But yeah, this film is really well made, and I just love the fact that it's so different than everything else that was coming out at the time. And I really would have loved to see Kinski do more stuff like this where he's the center instead of being pushed aside and used as a side character in lieu of people like Clint Eastwood or Franco Nero. Because I believe he was in one of the dollar films, correct?
He was in 2.
Yes.
He was in For a Few Dollars More, which was where I first saw him. And then A Barrel Full of Dollars.
And I also think he's a side character in Man Pride Vengeance alongside Nero. So it's like he was given this opportunity, and this is definitely like a Kinski vessel to get him out there and to make him popular at the time. But yeah, it just would have been really cool to see like more of this sort of stuff come out of it. But it is what it is. At least we got this. And like Brody said, we can compare it to High Plains Drifter, but this is like this is its own little thing. It's definitely more grounded. I mean, Kinski's the only real character that kind of feels like supernatural, you know?
Everyone else is it's just people.
Yeah.
It does follow, Akembar and his family a decent amount, which I think is a good thing, because it does kind of establish their family dynamic and how much he is just kind of a commandeering dickhead to anyone else but his son, who's like the only person he really has much of a good connection with. But it does kind of just establish the hold that he has over the town, and Gary just rampaging straight through all of it, and I really, really like that aspect of it as well.
Did you guys watch it in Italian with English subtitles, or did you watch the English dub? Because that is definitely not Kinski's voice.
No, so yeah, I could only gain access to a HD version on YouTube, which was only in English. So yeah, that kind of threw me off a little bit, but I could still put that shit aside and enjoy it for what it is.
So for our listeners out there, as I step back in the studio and then walk forward, and God Said to Cain is actually part of just a little physical media section here before we transition to our next film. It's part of the Vengeance Trails Arrow box set that includes In God Said to Cain, Banditos, My Name is Pecos, and Massacre Time. These films are excellent, and I would totally recommend this box set. I believe you can get this on Amazon or from the Arrow website currently. It is awesome. It has films from Lucio Fulci. I just saw this. Lucio Fulci and Massimo Dallamano and Antonio Margheriti, like we're talking about here. It's a good box set. I didn't pay too much for it. I think maybe $50 at the most. It was super good. But yeah. Anything else you guys want to say about In God Said to Cain before we move on to our next film?
I just want to say how much I love that scene where, and I said to you in the chat as well, how the bell just keeps ringing, and spoiler alert, they run into the bell tower and there's just a fucking dead body hanging off the fucking rope of the bell. I thought that was a pretty cool scene, actually. It really caught me off guard. Because I honestly thought it was just Kinski, it was his way of letting him know that he was, a presence was there, but it was a bit more of a shock factor than just him popping up there. It was, I thought it was done actually really well. And the beat of that scene, it definitely delivered.
Absolutely. I would also say, I think one of my favorite parts for it as well, the ultimate revenge, also spoiler alert, in that he didn't actually have to kill Akembar's son. He got Akembar to do it himself, to just ultimately fuck him up at the end before they died in the fire. That would, the piece de the resistance. Seriously, that was one of the better Westerns I've seen, and I don't think I had really heard of it until...
And this film might feature the most Italian of Italian scenes ever, where Kinski stares at the, quote, I'm just a whore girl, and stares at her for a long time, and you think that he's about to fuck her, and instead, in true Italian fashion, just slaps the shit out of her and then walks away.
Yeah, I thought it was as well. And I was like, dude, she sent you to prison for like how long?
Yeah. But hey, man, that's the town of Kinski. He didn't know if he was going to hit you or Anyway, moving on, transitioning into our next film. Another quote from Mr. Klaus Kisnki. Sometimes my heart hurts so much. I beat it with my fists. I try to run, but you cannot run from this. It waits for you. Even when you think you have escaped it, it is there. So our next film is Nosferatu the Vampire from 1979, directed by Werner Herzog. Nick, read that plot.
Sure thing. Jonathan Harker, an estate agent, is sent to Transylvania to meet a client, Count Dracula. On his journey, Harker stops at an inn situated in the hilly and desolated area. When the locals come to know about Harker's plan to visit Count Dracula's castle, they warn Harker to stay away. They tell tales of Dracula's evil and werewolves to prevent Harker from visiting the castle, but to no avail. Harker continues his journey after laughing at the villagers' superstitious beliefs and eventually reaches Dracula's mysterious castle, where he meets the vile Count Dracula.
Brody put matchsticks in his mouth that made him look like the fangs of little Kinski there. But yeah, guys, fucking Herzog's Nosferatu. I rant and rave about this film all the time being one of the best fucking vampire films out there. And nobody talks about it. Everybody's just fucking Lost Boys this, Lost Boys that. What's that film that you like so much, Brody?
Near Dark.
Near Dark. And those are great. But you want something truly haunting. You want something fucking just pure gothic horror. Werner Herzog's Nosferatu the Vampire is all that in a thick bag of chips. You want it, gotta have it. It's fucking awesome. Boys, have you seen this before?
No.
I have not seen this one, but I did see the original Nosferatu, of which I believe this is a direct remake.
Yes. Brody?
Yeah, no, I had not seen this before, and it was good to actually see it because, it definitely had what you just said, that gothic horror element that I just fucking beat my dick over pretty much. But it really showcased great acting.
Yes.
Between the actors themselves. And I'd never heard of any of these other actors other than the Sheila that I sent to you that was in Possession from 1981.
Yes.
They're the only two films that I've ever seen her in. So it was great to see her play this role and fucking kill it like always. The locations on this film are fucking beautiful. That whole lead up to his to the castle scene, his first introduction was absolutely filmed fucking it was framed so beautifully. It's just atmospheric, and that's probably what I like about it the most, just the atmosphere. It's just full of rich darkness, and it's just a fucking fantastic remake, and that's hard to do with a fucking iconic film like Nosferatu, but they definitely deliver, and Kinski's performance in this is just fucking, it's next level, which I will also discuss later when we talk about it. What about you, Slick Nick?
Well, I definitely enjoyed it. It was nice to have a Nosferatu that wasn't a silent film. And I do love Herzog. I love his documentaries, especially. But pretty much any of his films I really enjoy. So just having Klaus Kinski do a really good Max Schreck impression, essentially, of the Nosferatu, of Count Dracula, was great. I think it worked very, very well. He has that sort of commanding tone that really makes the character scary, which I think was harder to do in the original with, it just being a silent film. But I did like all of the actors, really. Bruno Ganz as Jonathan Harker was great as well. I think you probably you saw The House That Jack Built, right, Brody? The Von Trier movie?
Yeah, I like that.
He's Virgil. Yeah. He's Virgil.
Bullshit. I didn't fucking realize that.
He's Virgil that sends Jack to hell at the end of the movie. Spoiler alert.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Virgil's like fucking 80 in that film. It was hard to sort of picture that, sorry. Yeah.
This movie's not as
Bruno
old
Ganz.
as you think. 79, so.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, he was also like in Manchurian Candidate and the Faust films as well. Bruno Ganz is also an extremely accomplished actor, which I think really did help this film. It's just all the acting was great, especially Renfield. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. I especially loved the overall atmosphere, everything that had to do with the castle. It definitely captured the style of the original, and I think just greatly improved upon it. And Kinski as the man himself, Count Dracula, was just cherry on top.
Yeah, fucking A, man. This film, compared to the last movie, it is a different Kinski, and that is... And I'll get into that later, but fuck, his presence on screen is intense. And I think when I watched this, the way that the words that I used to describe him was pestilential and fervid. The guy looks and acts like the living embodiment of disease. He is sickly as fuck looking, and he is just nasty. And he moves and acts with such intensity. It is just great. You just can't take your eyes off him when he's on screen, and that just carries throughout the entire film. And I mean, like when you first see him and shit, whenever the guy cuts his finger with the bread knife and he charges him. Like, that is terrifying shit. Even now, like, you feel the intensity. Like, he just seems unpredictable in a thing that you know is scripted. It's just nuts. I love Kinski in this. I love the way that Herzog captures the locations, and I love how gothic and dark everything is. And that fucking, whenever he rocks up to the village, with all the fucking rats and shit, and then the plague comes with him, it is just memorable. The fucking courtyard scene where all the caskets are being brought through because the plague's destroyed the town. What the fuck? It is just nuts. The whole movie's nuts, and it is so scary. It's great, and it's definitely one that you have to watch. If you haven't seen it, go fucking watch it. Kinski is incredible in this. Did this win him awards or anything?
It would appear it was very, very, very well received. It's holding a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes as well right now.
Jeez.
Yeah. Let's see here. Roger Ebert even added it to his Great Movies collection back in 2011, but I am not seeing that it won any documentary. Herzog on the brain. I'm not seeing that it won any awards, really. As far as I can see here, probably wasn't likely to win very many in the US, because I don't think they were super into German films in 1979.
Fair enough. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. It is what it is. Yeah. Any final thoughts on Nosferatu the Vampire, boys?
I just want to say about, I probably should have said before about his acting there, just to vaguely mention it. There's only two people that can actually fucking pull off the Nosferatu the best, and that is Kinski and Willem Dafoe, other than the OG himself. Was it Max Schreck or whatever?
Max Schreck.
Question for you.
Schreck.
Do you think Willem Dafoe's only so good because of Kinski as a reference point?
Well, I was about to say that out of the two, I would have to say Kinski is more, because he just throws himself at the fucking role more so. But it all comes down to the direction of the movie and how it's implied, I guess. But I honestly can't praise his fucking role enough in this film. And like you hit the nail on the head when you described his performance. It's just fucking fantastic to watch. You can't take your eyes off the screen every time he's fucking on there, pretty much. It's good shit.
I think he and Willem are kind of on a couple different wavelengths, I think.
Yeah.
Because Kinski in this, it's a very intimidating presence to him. We do know that Willem Dafoe can go all out, can be like that. If you've ever seen like Green Goblin, or even the more like darker, serious stuff he's done, like Antichrist, like things like that. But I think this role with Kinski, this might even be one of his more reserved ones, especially compared to the next two films we're about to talk about. But he maintains an intense presence without being too over the top, which I think is good. It's kind of like he is almost channeling Max Schreck a little bit in that, and that he's not going too all out, but
definitely making it his own.
Yes. Especially compared to the scene that you mentioned earlier where Harker cuts his finger or his thumb at dinner and he sucks the blood out, because Max Schreck's Nosferatu does as well, but he does it in a much more like, oh, let me see your hand, I'll take a look at the cut, and then he just kind of can't help himself and like takes a lick at it where he pulls his hand away. Whereas Kinski, he genuinely can't help it. From the very moment that he cuts it, he sees the blood and goes right for it.
Let's throw this chair.
Yeah, it's much more intense, but like
Method acting.
overall, it's one of his more reserved roles, I definitely think. Whereas I think Willem kind of went a little bit crazier for it. I don't think Willem's is probably as good as Kinski's,
No.
but I love both of them, regardless.
I think this is prime Kinski. I think this is peak. I think it's you can call it downhill from here, but I just think that, you know, like you said, it's a more of a reserved role than the other two, but I think he just had it really dialed in. You know what I mean? Like he just knew exactly what he wanted. Herzog knew what he wanted, and those two, as much as they fucking fought, they knew the art that they were creating and what they wanted to accomplish at the end. And I just think that it shows on screen that he knew what the fuck he was doing.
I can definitely see why Werner dealt with him as much as he did to keep getting him back
You're
for
an
movies.
asshole, but you're a talented asshole.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, transitioning to our next film with another quote. One should judge a man mainly from his depravity. Virtues can be fake, pravities are real. Our next film is 1986's Crawlspace, directed by David Schmoller, one of Brody's favorite directors. I'll read the plot for this one. The sordid tale of a deranged Nazi doctor named Gunther, who rents rooms to a beautiful young woman. Gunther spies on the women from peepholes in an elaborate network of crawl spaces above their room and devises sinister schemes and deadly booby traps to kill them. And that is probably the most summarized way I can describe it without ruining all the craziness that happens in this film. Boys, so we go from leading man, spaghetti western, phantom killer to vampire, blood-sucking,
reserved, atmospheric, to gothic, creepy man.
to full-on Nazi madman. And
This movie is insane.
it is absolutely bonkers. Now, just a little backstory. Schmoller loves making movies in this era. He made another one of Brody's favorite films, Puppet Master 3, and he visits the same Nazi type stuff in that film. I think, is that the movie with Lynch in it? Richard Lynch, where he's just nuts?
Yes, or Richard
Yes.
Franklin. One of the two.
Oh, no.
You're right, Mr. Bowser.
Yes, Schmoller does a lot of those full moon pictures, and this is actually an Empire picture, so it's full moon before it was full moon. And all the usual suspects are here. But the fact that it's Kinski, and Nick, you actually watched a mini doc about the creation of this film, so you can probably give some more details behind it. And
I did.
just to get this off the top and see if you guys agree with me, this had to have influenced Saw.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I mean,
Brody
I don't
thinks
know.
7, but like the traps are pretty elaborate here, especially that weird slingshot thing with the knife in the attic.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it probably more influenced Saw than anything else I could think of. The chair with the asshole spike.
The staging of the girl at the piano, super Jigsaw.
Oh, yeah, that's...
The girl attached to the wall, bolted to the wall, whenever that she opens the door, and then the second door swings and she's bolted to the wall, and you can see the nuts holding her hands on. Insane.
Yeah, this movie gets a bit rough with its...
Yes.
The only one I'm just kind of like bummed we didn't get to see, what's his name? The rich guy get his...
Yes.
He just kind of walks up the stairs, opens the door, goes, hello, and then he's out of the movie. He's just gone. He's been removed from the script.
Kinski's.
He gets Kinski. But yeah, no, I mean, I definitely think with the traps and the booby traps and the fact that he doesn't really directly kill... I don't think he directly kills anybody other than like triggering the trap near the beginning when the one woman walks in and finds... what's her name? The girl that he has in the cage.
Oh, fuck.
It cuts her fucking tongue out.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like him triggering that directly to kill her, just because she found his secret room and all of that. I think that's the only
Such a
kill he
strong
really does
opening.
directly.
Such a strong opening.
But yeah, I can definitely see how it would influence Saw that he kind of just orchestrates the traps to kill people, but he doesn't really do it himself.
Kinski did
Or
another
the collector.
Kinski did another film called Slaughter Hotel that predates this, and it's kind of no traps though.
I would just have to agree, actually, more so with Nick there with the collector and the collection.
Yeah.
That feels to me more along the lines of this film. You got a house, you got the trap set
But
up.
that goes into other people's houses. not his. Like, he kind of made this and then invited people in.
Yeah, I just meant like the traps themselves. Honestly, that just came to me. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I guess there's no way of these girls getting out of them.
No. No. Whereas the collector's just like, I'll put like a giant swinging bladed thing to destroy everybody at a rave. Why not?
This predates the subgenre.
Yeah. Should I say 86? When did the collector come out?
That was like 2007.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the first trap films. I mean,
2009.
Other than Nightmare on Elm Street, because if you think about the ending, Nancy puts up a bunch of traps for Freddy. But I think that's just a Wes Craven thing. He loves his fucking traps, because think of People Under the Stairs.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking that literally just before with the girl locked up in the cage and the tongue cut out. Because don't they do that in People Under the Stairs?
Doesn't that one kid have his tongue cut out? Yeah.
Yeah, he channels through the walls as well. Like, sort of like a ventilation. But I'd never seen this film before, so I really wanted to throw it on there as an excuse to suss it. I'd seen the poster work of Kinski with blood around his mouth, and I was like, fuck, we have to do this. So yeah, and not only the fact of the director itself, but what they were able to achieve with this premise, I actually really enjoyed. I kind of felt that it should have went a little bit longer, just because I wanted to see more Kinski. I kind of felt some scenes were a little bit. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially when Nick will elaborate on that in a minute.
It's only about an hour and 20 minutes, I think.
Yeah. And I'm even surprised they got that much worth with the man himself. But anywho, I think for all that bullshit aside and for what the film is and the budget and all that, I think it's still a great fucking film. It just goes to show that you don't have to have a big budget to create such a great film with a basic premise. It's very creative. It's constructed in these layers of fun and horrific events that I love in any horror film. So it definitely fulfilled my needs. And Kinski, as much as he was a cunt behind the scenes, it still looks like he had fun with it. And yeah, I don't know. It's weird. What about you, Nick? What did you think of this film?
Well, it was definitely one batshit roller coaster of a movie for sure. Watching the character of Carl Gunther just go from already insane to completely descending into absolute madness the further that the film goes, and just watching our final girl, Lori, just try to navigate this insane situation she has gotten herself in by just jumping too hard onto an apartment that was too good to be true. It's definitely a ride. I did very much enjoy it. I think it maybe could have been a little better, but I do like Schmoller's, like, what he was able to do with it. It is far different looking at some of the production and like what the original drafts were meant to be. It's interesting to see what it became, because I believe the first draft was it was meant to be an anti-Vietnam War movie. Oh. And Schmoller wanted it to be about Gunther making a POW camp in his attic. And it just kind of became more about the traps. And I'm like, I wonder what it would have been like if they gone with his original script and everything for it. But I believe a lot of it, and I will get into this here in a minute when I kind of discuss the film that he made about making this, because he was determined to make this movie no matter what. There was a lot of pushback from the studios and everything on stuff that Schmoller wanted to do, and basically there was a lot of things that they told him he had to do no matter what, and he just kind of went, oh, fuck you, this is my movie, damn it. So it was a lot of Schmoller really trying to push through to get the movie that he wanted to make made. But he did have to make certain concessions and changes and everything, and it's just really interesting to see the final product for sure. But it's not bad. It is a good movie. I did like it. It probably just, I don't know. Out of the four, I don't think it was my favorite. I think that was probably in God Said To Cain.
Fair enough. Yeah, this movie's crazy, and I absolutely fucking love it. The Nazi element to it is interesting. I think it adds to the Gunther character, like this another layer of insanity, and the fact that like he's not a direct Nazi, but he's a child of that era, and he's kind of just like living on past it. And like he even acknowledges the fact that like when he was young and like when they lost the war, he was sent to Argentina, and he just kept growing up as a Nazi and doing all that.
It's definitely weird about the ideology for it, because I thought at first he was kind of going to go against it, because at one of the bits where he is writing in his journal and he's kind of voiceovering it, he talks about he didn't grow up knowing his dad was like killing Jewish people already, because he was talking about euthanasia and using it in his practice as a doctor. And then at one point he says, and then I found out that my father was using it as an excuse to kill Jewish people. And I thought he was going to be like, he was going to kind of go against it or anything, until he just goes full tilt in the other direction by the end of the movie.
He almost sees killing as a way to transcend his own mortality. It's interesting.
He waxes poetic a lot in his like journal entry sections, where it gets a little interesting and the movie kind of slows down a bit. They aren't my favorite, but they are interesting.
Now,
and I do think that the movie needed those moments.
Why the makeup before the Hitler speech?
Part of me thinks it might just be an 80s movie version of, well, we got to make him look insane, make him smear lipstick all over himself.
Fair enough.
And the whole Russian roulette with the gun.
No, that's interesting.
It's like
he is self-loathing. He hates himself.
It was kind of like validation that what he was doing was just. So like, hey, if this doesn't kill me, then what I'm doing is okay.
Mm-hmm.
So by the end, where he gets killed, but is it the same gun that kills?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yep.
whenever he gets killed by the same gun, that's pretty much the whole story coming to an end, because that's the gun that was going to kill him eventually anyway. So
it just wouldn't fire when he was the one pulling the trigger.
yes. Or whenever Schmoller told him to put real bullets in it.
Which Schmoller claims he did not do.
Nick, a little backstory before we transition?
Yes, of course. So I watched the mini documentary that came out in 1999 that David Schmoller did, called Please Kill Mr. Kinski. Which was about the making of Crawlspace and basically everything that he had to go through just to get his damn movie made. So initially, whenever they first started filming, he was not particularly keen on all of the controversy around Mr. Kinski before going into shooting the movie with him. He basically, I think it said he looked at just the impressive amount of films that he had done, and he picked Klaus, said, yeah, I want him to be the villain in my movie. And he said that after he did that, one of his colleagues saw an interview that Kinski had done in Playboy magazine. And he said, have you read that article yet? He said, no. So he went and he read the interview with him in Playboy magazine and said that immediately from that very moment, he went, oh, I fucked up. I should not have picked this guy. He is a deranged madman. But we'll stick it out. We'll see what we can do. Comes on, and he says that the very first day that they basically started shooting, from the moment he said lights, sound, action, Kinski immediately started screaming. And so he stopped, he halted, he went, okay, whoa, what's going on? What's wrong? To which Kinski went, action, action, action. I do over 200 movies. The directors are always saying action. He was like, oh, okay, all right, fine. Well, I'll entertain this. What should I say then? And he said, I don't care what you say, just don't say action. Went, okay, what about Klaus? I'll just say your name. He went, fine. Okay, we could do that. So for the next day and a half or so, it was lights, sound, Klaus. And he said, and he would start acting. And it worked for a day and a half until he did the standard thing, said, Klaus. Kinski started screaming again. And he's like, all right, what is it this time? And he went, Klaus, I do 200 movies and everyone's always saying Klaus. Just don't say Klaus. He went, so what should I say? Nothing. I'll start when I'm ready. He went, I hate this man already. So does this for about 2 days, where he essentially just lets him direct himself until eventually he goes, I can't take this, and calls the producers, and he goes, I'm firing him. I'm not working with him. I'm done. He's an asshole. I'm firing him. Production talks to the American distributor, who say that they will immediately pull if they take him out because of the power of his name. So he is forced to work with him for the rest of the film. And it eventually developed to where he was not allowed to say cut. Klaus was going to stop when he considered the scene to be done. He basically wasn't allowed to direct him at all because Kinski hated directors. There were a few clips of interviews of him basically just saying he could not stand directors. He couldn't stand anybody telling him what to do at all. He would fly off the handle the very moment. And so Schmoller just suffered through the entire thing just to get his movie made. And at one point says that one of the producers came to him and was 100% completely serious, not joking, came to him and said, we're going to kill him for the insurance money. We are going to kill him so that no one ever has to deal with this man ever again. We will get the payout. We will hire somebody else and we will finish the movie. To which Schmoller was like, I'm not murdering anybody. That's not happening. Deal with it. We're just going to finish the movie and then we'll just never work with him again. And so for the rest of the production, every once in a while, different cast and crew members would come up to him and say, Mr. Schmoller, please kill Mr. Kinski by the end of the film. That was pretty much the gist of it. It was about like 12, 15-minute mini doc that just kind of went over the whole thing. But Schmoller was kind of laughing about it. By this point, it came out in 99, so Kinski was dead for about 9 years by this point. But he did say that he did feel bad when Kinski did actually die. That he read in the obituary was a quote from Schmoller himself about how hard it was to work with him. And he said that he felt bad because someone's obituary should be about their accomplishments, not about their shortcomings. But that he went, I'm not the one who said to put that in there, so I guess that was just karma coming back to bite him.
Fair enough. Well, thank you for that behind-the-scenes insight on 1986's Crawlspace. So, transitioning to our final film of the evening. Here's another quote. I don't need anybody to tell me how to be alive. Okay, last film, Vampire in Venice from 1988. Directed by a plethora of people, including Augusto Caminito, Klaus Kisnki, Maurizio Lucchini, and Luigi Cozzi. We've heard his name before on Phenomenal. Plot, Brody?
As a Paris Catalano travels to Venice following the trail of the last known appearance of Nosferatu, who was seen at a carnival, he learns through a seance that the vampire is seeking eternal death and tries to put an end to its existence once and for all.
So, this film, of all the films, had one of the most troubled productions, which is why there was 4 directors. Kinski, this was the second to last film that Mr. Kinski made before his death. The last film being the one he actually directed, called Paganini. But yeah, he went off the rails here, demanded a bunch of shit, made the film go over budget, demanded that a separate crew be made for him to go out and film stuff on his own. Yeah, this film is a fucking mess. It's oddly watchable, though, for being such a fucking mess. It's kind of a sequel to Herzog's film, but not really. Kinski's wearing maybe a third of the makeup, and he is definitely a lot older at this point. His performance is eccentric. It's definitely not as dialed in as it was in Herzog's. There's some of the nuance there, but at the same time, there's none of it. You can tell that he is just not happy with being there. I don't know why Donald Pleasant subjected himself to any of this.
Or Christopher Plummer.
The movie is bonkers. It is absurd. I'm thankful that Severn Films released it, and I watched the doc that they've produced as well that went with it, and it's pretty damn good too, and it's definitely a good companion piece. Boys, what did you think of Vampire in Venice?
Well, that's a good question, Mr. Gaza. For me watching it, I'd already heard about your thoughts on it and that, so I went in with an open mind as well. And, you can definitely tell that it just does not feel like a sequel for me personally to the Nosferatu. I don't know. It's really troubling. And you can see that throughout the editing and the acting in some scenes. And it feels a little bit convoluted. I don't know. When I was watching it, I was just sort of like, why the fuck are we jumping from A to C and not talking about point B? And then, some of the editing was just laced with like just music and shots of Venice. Or it's look, I will give it the time and day to watch it. Absolutely, but it just, the flow of the film was really off-putting for me personally.
Oh yeah.
It's
Brody.
I'm really trying to think of positive stuff to say about this.
Those scenes of Kinski just riding in a gondola?
Yeah.
Okay, so why he's credited as a director, that one unit filmed hours of footage of him first thing in the morning. So he'd wake everybody up before the sun got up. So they go out to Venice so he could film himself as the vampire as the sun's rising, walking through Venice and then in the gondola. So those are just insert shots of like hours of footage he was forced them to shoot of him just being Klaus Kinski walking around.
Yeah, I couldn't understand it.
What an asshole. God.
And Cozzi, Luigi Cozzi was the fucking guy who had to hold the camera while Klaus Kinski did that. Like, poor fucking Cozzi. Like, he learned under Dario Argento and then has to fucking fucking deal with
Deal with
Kinski.
this shit.
That is interesting, because I was going to say a lot of those transitory scenes of just the shots of Venice and everything felt a lot like the shots of the cities in Suspiria. In the original in Suspiria. I was going to say it felt kind of Argento. That's interesting that he trained under him.
I will say, though, this film does have a bit of an atmospheric presence about it. I will praise it for that.
Gloomy
though.
as fuck.
Yeah, it's a very dull and depressing type of film. But all those interior shots.
It's fun for Venice.
Venice? Yeah.
Yeah.
A Mediterranean, bright, sunny city. Right on the ocean.
It's yeah. I mean, the interior shots, I will give it that time and day for. I will say that, because some of the locations are actually like really beautiful. But like you were saying, how the fuck did Donald Pleasance agree to this film? Like, I just don't understand it. I was actually surprised. I didn't even realize he was in it, to be honest.
It may have still been, I mean, the whole reason that the distributor for Crawlspace threatened to pull out, they were like, he has marquee power. He has a name. It's Klaus freaking Kinski, dude. Like, you have to work with him or we will not distribute the film. So, like, I could very well see Donald Pleasance and Christopher Plummer just being like, I'll work with, I mean, he's an industry legend. I'll work with him. And then by the end of it, they're like, God, I will never work with him again.
It's so fucking different than any of the films we talked about, because he's just so fucking weird. He's not there. It's like he's there, but he's not. It's fucked. And just like in the documentary, they talk about him just by near the end of his career, it was his way or no way at all. And he just wasn't there to perform unless it was that way. It's
yeah, it is something. I mean, can I also say one thing for the premise? It was funny that Brody said, "Why are we jumping from point A to C?" The premise of the film itself almost feels like that. The opening, like explanation, the exposition of where we are now, compared to the last movie, it feels like this is the third movie in a trilogy that never got a second movie.
How did he get to Venice in the basement?
It is never explained how he got to Venice. Not only that, but the very establishing, like, coming in, and Donald Pleasance is supposed to be this, like, I am an expert on Nosferatu. I have been chasing him my entire life. He disappeared at this point during a plague in 1786. It's like, why wasn't the movie during that? Yeah. Why wasn't that the sequel? Why did you put the story of a sequel into the exposition introduction to this film and then make this one after that when we got nothing in between this and the original Nosferatu?
It's fucked, but it's watchable because Kinski's just so weird in it. And like Brody said, it has an atmosphere that shouldn't be there, like Nick and I said, because it's fucking Venice, but somehow they make it dark. They drain all the color out of the fucking scene, and they just, it's an oddball film, and it's interesting part of Kinski's career. The latter chapter is just so interesting.
I wonder what Herzog thought of it.
Probably vomited.
You know he had to watch it. Yeah, he probably didn't like it.
So do you guys know what was your first introduction to Kinski?
Yes, I know. Well, I will start off by saying my first introduction to Kinski was from you, Mr. Bowser.
Really?
Oh.
I remember you sending me this fucking video from YouTube, and and you pretty much said to me, from what I recall, like, you have to watch this guy. It's hilarious. So I did, obviously, and I was fucking in hysterics at watching it, because I remember being like, what the fuck, who is this guy? You know, the more that we talked about him and sussed him out, you know, we were like, just what a legend, you know, watching this guy backchat a fucking producer and director on set and carry on like an absolute fucking pork chop over nothing. It's like, just film your scene and shut the fuck up, honestly. And I've never seen anyone do that on set before, especially in a professional matter. I mean, it's unheard of. Who the fuck does that? And it was so entertaining to hear and see. And I just love the controversy that he holds. So it was unusual. And yeah, like I said, intriguing. And I was sold instantly on him. So to suss him out, it was a doozy. Well, that was my first introduction to him. What about you, Slick Nick?
So mine was definitely a few dollars more, even if I didn't know who he was at the time.
Yes.
Because I have seen all of the Dollars movies, I think, except Barrel Full. Like Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More. Was a Barrel Full the third movie? Was it A Fistful of Dollars, A Few Dollars More, and A Barrel Full of Dollars?
A few dollars more is where Kinski's at. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if Barrel Full was the end of the original trilogy or if they just kept making them after that.
I believe so.
Okay, so I've seen the first $2 movies then, because I have not seen Barrel. So A Few Dollars More definitely would have been it. I just would not have known who he was at the time. Because I didn't really get much of an idea of who he was until we started doing the research for this. And I also saw some of the clips that Brody no doubt saw as well. My favorite of which being him on like a panel at like a film convention or something, getting mad, getting up, like slapping his mic away and then walking off the panel because someone asked him a question and he didn't like.
Is that the one that goes for 30 seconds long and then he grabs the actress with him? Or
he grabs the actress and walks off with her, yeah. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with this man?
He like kicks the chair.
He goes full tilt on that one. And then, yeah, I also saw the clip of him screaming at the director and everything like that, which is probably the biggest blow up I've seen since the Christian Bale one.
Yeah. Did you actually see the footage to that? The Christian Bale one?
No, there's only audio of it, I think.
Yeah. What about you, Mr. Bowser?
Yeah, probably the same place as Mr. Nick there. I didn't realize who he was until later in life, but I would have to say a few dollars more if that is the right film. I'm thinking, what year is that?
Yeah, for a few dollars more, should be late 60s, I think 66 or 7.
Yep, for a few dollars more. Juan Wild, The Hunchback.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, so it would definitely be that film for me. And then I just became more aware of him as my love for cinema grew. Kinski's fucking awesome, man. So, do you guys have a favorite role that's been discussed or not?
Yeah, I would say Gary Hamilton for and God Said To Cain is probably my favorite of all of these, just because of the presence that he commands.
Okay.
It's probably a bit of a bias in that I like westerns a lot more than I like vampire movies.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say Gary Hamilton.
Brody?
Yeah, I would agree with you there, Nick. I originally had Nosferatu because I watched that as the second film after Crawlspace. Then I watched God Said To Cain last, and I was like, fuck, like, I mean, yeah, this is probably for me, his strongest performance out of the four. Nosferatu coming in at second. I feel like the camera is really attached to Kinski, and it captures the physical emotions of the character itself, because we get these really nice zoom ins and close ups. And when he stares at another character, you could just see the persona that he draws in with the emotions on his face. It's actually got this cunning and mysterious look and way about him, and it gives his character a bit more of a punch, if you know what I mean. It's just, I will admit, though, I was a little bit skeptical of him being in a spaghetti western, but, it feels like that this part was particularly written for him, and he owns it. I found him to be great. I only wish he was in more of these spaghetti westerns.
So he actually is, Brody, and I will mention a couple of the ones of note that I've seen and would recommend. I'd always have to go for Nosferatu, Herzog's version, of course, for when it comes to Kinski and his performance, because like I said, I believe he was like the most dialed in there, despite problems. Some films of note, The Great Silence from 1968. That is a Western that takes place during the wintertime, and Kinski's in it, and that film's pretty awesome. Double Face from 1969. Count Dracula in 1970. He actually plays Renfield in that.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh. I'd like to see that.
Adios Compañeros, another spaghetti Western in 1971. He played Reverend Cotton in that. Shanghai Joe in 1973. Played Scalper Jack. What else here? He also was on Footprints on the Moon, 1975. Played Professor Blackman. That is a Giallo film. That film kicks ass. He played Jack the Ripper in 1976. Well, in the film Jack the Ripper in 1976 as Dr. Dennis Orloff. Another great film. And of course, Schizoid in 1980, which recently just got a 4K release. And that is also another great film. So just a couple roles of note there for anyone looking to expand beyond the films we mentioned here. So, boys, I have to ask, a monster or misunderstood? So when we look back at his life, and we'll keep this kind of brief because we're trying to focus on the art here, where he grew up, the time period he grew up, all the things he went through. And on top of that, mixed mental illness, which was probably a side effect of all those things. Was his erratic behavior and his intensity to be expected almost to a certain level because of the way things were? And would it be better to look at Kinski from an art perspective rather than what type of person was he? Because there's no really reference point of the stuff that he went through other than the people that were there. Nick, Brody?
So I think it's probably a combination of both. I don't think the mental illness really helped in curbing his aggression, things like that. I do think it was definitely harder to get help for mental illnesses throughout that period of time, especially when he would have been younger, during World War II and things like that. Because there was a lot of things that they pretty much did confirm did happen to him. There's a lot of stuff that he claims happened to him that at least Herzog as well says that he probably did not actually have happen. Herzog believes he did make up a lot of like things in his autobiography, but there are records of things of like when he was conscripted. He spent time as a POW in Britain for a long time, but he was also a conscript from Poland. It wasn't exactly his choice. So he had a lot of trauma. He did have a lot of, mental illness that probably was just hereditary as well. I think if I remember correctly, his parents were also kind of crazy. So I don't think that really helped, but by the point where he's been in over 100 movies and people are still choosing to work with him, who he is when you're still choosing to work with him.
Yes.
Even except, in the case of like Schmoller, who just knew his name, I guess he should be great for this part, only to start to discover who he is and then just kind of by the end of it be like, I'm never working with this guy ever again. Whereas Herzog worked with him a ton on a bunch of movies to the point where he himself made his own documentary about all the movies they made together, about, their sort of interpersonal relationship and everything. And even though it was called My Best Friend, it was literally just, I didn't like him as a person. He wasn't he was not a good guy. His family doesn't really like him, things like that. All that stuff that they can infer. As for the art, as for his acting, I think he's one of the greats in that regard, especially. There is a reason he's been in that many movies. The guy goes full method and full tilt for every one of them as much as he possibly needs to. And there's been plenty of people, even now, who go full method and are seen as kind of insufferable until the movie's over. I can think of like people talking about Daniel Day-Lewis and stuff like that, which you leave controversy and you leave a legacy, and he definitely left a legacy, and it is what it is. So I think both. I think it's a combination. He could be a monster, could be misunderstood. There's definitely a lot to unpack there. Brody, what do you think?
Yeah, a lot to unpack. And this was a hard question for me because I'm trying to look at it from a positive point of view, from what he is portraying as this person. Like he could be carrying on like this person to channel these emotions, maybe to portray the characters he plays. And you could say it's definitely he has had demons, or it could be the fact we just don't understand him and his world, So then that potentially makes him frustrated and arrogant. We're trying to look at it from us and then his perspective. Yet, like, he has to fight back to explain things. Maybe it's because, he's just very proud of his work and takes it very serious. But I just keep thinking of things to really try and find a meaning behind all of his actions, because you'll hear one thing from one set and then you'll hear another from the other, or you'll say it. And just all these different stories about him. It's hard to, justify what he was actually really like. I mean, we've seen some footage of what he is capable of, but it's a bit of a hit and miss, really. And I can't really say either he is a monster or misunderstood, but what I can say is in the end, for whatever it was he did, it worked, and there's no denying that he's one of the best actors to grace the screen. It was like I said, a hard question for me to try and talk about, especially from his perspective, not knowing, it was a good question. I had fun with it. It was a good one. What about you, Mr. Bowser?
Definitely a legacy that needs to be preserved and seen from just an art perspective. Like you said, over 130 films, career 40 plus years. The guy was active. And like Nick said, these people chose to work with him long after knowing his reputation. And that speaks volume. And another thing can be said, that these directors were able to make secondary content on top of their films about working with Kinski. So it just shows you what type of person he was that he could generate that amount of content on just doing one project alone creates two, whether that's good or not. Now, I see a lot of his freakouts, and I see a lot of his, what would you call it, moments of weakness in the public eye. And I feel like he was under a lot of pressure to be the Klaus Kinski. And where he was in the world wasn't probably the best place economically, wasn't the best place socially, especially for him and the way he grew up. I feel like he had a certain expectation for the people around him in the world, and that wasn't ever met. So he just constantly stayed miserable. It's sad that a lot of his name is tarnished because of his actions, but whenever you look back and see some of his performances, it's easy to overlook some of that because it's some memorable shit. And I'm happy that so many years later we're still here talking about him, and we're able to appreciate his films despite all of his shortcomings and the things that he may have done that are certainly questionable. So
yeah, I was just gonna say it's a lot of it helps with the uncertainty for it as well, because I mean, like, it was, with people still choosing to work with him, there are still people who give Roman Polanski standing ovations even knowing damn well what he did and the fact that he can't come back to the U.S. for a good reason. So
fair enough.
No,
Anywho, personal feelings on Polanski aside.
That ain't personal. That man's a fucking monster. So
yeah, so to wrap things up, Klaus Kinski is definitely a one-of-a-kind actor, one-of-a-kind human being that will be remembered for years to come, and I'm happy that we were able to sit back and talk about his career at just a brief glimpse. We might revisit it in the future with 4 more films and a part 2. Who knows? Because I certainly enjoyed doing this, and I certainly enjoyed going back and rewatching these films and giving them another look. Boys?
Yeah, I just want to say it was a fucking pleasure to go and suss out some Kinski. I mean, the guy has fucking range. The guy has absolute fucking range, and I feel like you could choose him for any fucking genre film and he will nail it. And he's worked with some high profile actors. I mean, there's no denying that. And, it's just a shame that he has a tainted legacy with his actions behind the scenes. And it's actually, I just wish the world today would see more of his work and what he was actually like in front of the camera instead of behind the camera. Because yeah, like you said, he's one of the greats. There's no denying that.
Yeah, I definitely had a good time going through these as well. It was fun. I think it was interesting for us to be able to give our 2 cents on someone who no doubt is going to be remembered for a very long time, good and or bad. But yeah, it is, I think, a good idea to take a look at the art of somebody like Kinski, to attempt to separate it from the person that he was and just kind of look at it on its own merit. A lot of other people, worked on these projects as well. A lot of them, I think were really good, really well done. Gave me another chance to watch a Herzog film as well, which I appreciate. But yeah, no, I would say I'd be down to do part 2 sometime in the future as well. There is so much more to cover. I mean, like we said, he's done over 130 films. So this is just barely scraping the surface, only doing 4 of them. This is like 1% of the grand total of everything that he's done. But it's just interesting to take a look back and just sort of a retrospective over a figure as controversial as him.
Absolutely. So I will finish the show off with one final quote from Mr. Kinski. I actually get venereal disease more often than most people catch colds. Good night, everybody.
I was very poor when I was a kid, we didn't even have to eat for days, and I really know what poorness is here. And so it was the time when I started to earn a lot of money, and and we had just, like party, maybe the wrong word. How do you say in English if you have a fest, like I was saying? Yeah. Every day almost, because we were working hard. I was working 10 years without any day of holiday, never in 10 years. But I earned so much money, and I threw it out of the window, and I invited everybody. Even the postman had French champagne. I showed him in the morning, and he came and had champagne, because it was my fairy tale, So, but then after years, I thought, no, I don't want to do that anymore, because I'm just, what I'm doing is for, But there's no, being sorry about it, It's nothing being sorry. Opposite, It was just fun, you see. we loaded our tables for lunch, like in fairy tales, with everything you wanted. We were eating very little, but it took hours to load the table, So because we never had anything, It's like people, you always talk about money. Fuck, I don't talk about money because I don't want to talk about bullshit, and they always want to talk me into, yes, but, and I say, quick, don't finish your line. I know it, and I know it, and I do it, and not because you say it, okay? Now, so I made it short, I always say, no, I do it just for money. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not true, who knows, but it's my problem. Okay, in France, they would never accept it, and for years, they took it like a joke. Okay, but this film, we didn't do that for money. I say, yes, this only for money, just for money, which is actually true. But what comes out of it only counts. If comes something out of it, people are impressed by, for instance, then it doesn't matter you did it for nothing or you did it for millions of dollars. Or if not, even less, it's interesting for what you did it for. It's also stupid. It's all for nothing. You say en français, gratuit. It doesn't mean it's gratis. Yeah, it's free. It's free. It doesn't mean anything. Those questions. They just want always to blame something on you. Always saying, yeah, you and why and he and so. I did once for 20,000 people the New Testament. It was one of my shows I did. It means I was standing there and I was saying it my way. I was saying it, okay? So I changed the whole Testament. I put the things in from today and so. And I got a lot of money for it, but I had a contract for all over the world to do it, but I did it only 2 times and I said, fuck off, all of you, because I don't want to finish like this, like he finished. I want to be nailed on the cross. So and then people ask me, yeah, but you ask money for it. I say, yes, and a lot. And what does they do in Rome and what they do in your church, what they don't ask money, they ask much more money than I got. Okay, this stupid question, you ask money, but what does it change? What does it change that somebody says the words which may interest people, or they pretend for 2,000 years it interests them, okay? What does it change? You get money for it, saying it or not? It's all false. It's all false. That's what all those talk in movies, most of the talk about things is all false. It's all lying, And the thing is not because it's so alarming that it's lying. The thing, it's so boring.